Hey everyone, after the move e4, e5, I guess we all know after knight to f3, bishop to c4 and bishop to b5. These are very common moves. But today we are going to try something different. We will start with the move bishop to c4. This is known as the bishop's opening. Here black can respond with knight to c6, bishop to c5 or knight to f6, which we are going to look at in this game. Here the main move that I am going to recommend is pawn to d4, which is known as the Urosov Gambit. Black's main move here is to take this pawn on d4. After e takes d4, white will play the move knight to f3. Now the e4 pawn is hanging. Black can play something like knight to c6 or bishop to c5, but we are going to look at knight takes e4. Here, white will play queen takes d4, attacking the knight on e4. And now black has got choices where he will move his knight. If black plays a move like, suppose, queen to e7, defending and threatening some nasty discoveries, then white will simply castle on the king side, and the move rook to e1, which will pose serious threats on the black queen and the knight. So the move queen to e7 becomes practically useless. So instead, here after knight takes e4 and queen takes d4, queen to e7 is out of the picture. What if black plays knight to d6, attacking the active bishop on c4 square? So here white can simply ignore the threat and castle again on the king side. And if black went for this bishop on c4, then after rook to e1 check, black can only play this move bishop to e7, but after that the g7 pawn is no longer defended and white can simply take this. And if you think the rook can be defended via rook to f8, then after bishop to h6 there is no defending this rook because the bishop on e7 is pinned. So going back, here after the move queen takes d4, we can see that knight to d6 is pretty much useless. Let's see what happens if knight to c5 is played. Here again short castle. Now black can try knight to c6, but we will give this intermediate move rook to e1 check. Now bishop to e7 can't be played because if we go, then the knight will hang on the c5 square, the bishop is pinned. So instead of that, black has to go for knight to e6. But after that, queen to e4. And if you look at this position overall, white has his king castle, his pieces, the knight, the bishop and the queen in the center, and black has hardly any pieces developed. So if something like bishop to e7 is played, then after knight to c3 continuing development, let's say black castles, white can put this knight on this very active d5 square, and black is pretty much reluctant to move this pawn to d6 because the knight on e6 would be attacked by many pieces. And here black's position is very cramped. Let's say black plays something like h6, then after queen to g4 we are again threatening the move bishop takes h6. So let's say to avoid that, black plays king to h8, then we can simply play queen to h5, renewing the threat of bishop takes h6. Now black can play something like, for example, practically there are no moves, but let's say black tries something like bishop to f6 just to demonstrate. After bishop takes h6, g takes h6 and queen takes h6, there is a check and the bishop on f6 is hanging, and after king to g8 you can take this bishop simply, or you can play rook to e4 and practically there is no defense against rook to g4. So there are a lot of threats in this position. Black is dead lost here. Black cannot defend this position in any way possible. So going back, there are a lot of moves to go back here. Bishop here, knight goes back, we are going to look at the position where black played the move knight to e4, and after queen to d4, knight to c5. So that's not an option here. What if black plays f5 to defend this? Well, now as we can see, after playing f5, this diagonal is completely weakened, so black is not going to castle on the king side, so that's basically a terrible move. And after knight to c3, the position for white is pretty good, the pieces are developed, and if something like queen to f6 is played, then white can simply castle in this position because there is no threat. So let's say a short castle and queen takes d4 if played, then after knight takes d4, the pawn on f5 is under attack, and black will have a hard time developing, while white will have a castle king and a rook on the open file. Instead, after queen takes f6, white can simply play knight to d5 as well, which is an even powerful move, which forces kind of this trade after queen takes d4 and knight takes d4. The only move here is king to d8 defending the c7 pawn, and after knight takes f5, white regained his extra material, extra pawn, and this position is completely winning because white has so many pieces in the center. So going back, we have seen all these moves where the knight can go and how can we defend the knight, and the only correct move in this position is to play our knight to f6. But here also, although white is down a pawn, but white can simply play bishop to g5, continuing with the development. After bishop to e7, white can continue something like castles, and let's say black continues with something like h6, and then we can simply go for something like queen to h4 and short castles, and there are all sort of lines like bishop to h6, but we will cover that in some another video. But for now, if you like this video, please subscribe to my channel MedChess, and I will see you there in my next video. Take care.